Good evening and welcome. I'm Tina Hosley, the Director of Operations for ToniTurner.com, and I'll be facilitating tonight's session. We're pleased to present How to Escape Stress and Trade Smarter, presented by Toni Turner and Diane Alexander. Toni Turner is an author, educator, and speaker. Diane Alexander is a psychologist and a neuroscience specialist. And now, I'm pleased to turn the microphone over to Toni and Diane so that we can begin tonight's session. Thanks so much.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to How to Escape Stress and Trade Smarter. This is Toni Turner, and again, we welcome you all today. Some of you know me. I am the author of A Beginner's Guide to Day Trading Online, A Beginner's Guide to Short-Term Trading, and Short-Term Trading in the New Stock Market, plus Invest to Win. And I'm proud to say these books have been translated into 7 languages. And you all know I've appeared on different television networks, and I speak at traders' expos and money shows across the country. Today, joining me for our webinar is my colleague, Diane Alexander. Diane, why don't you speak to the folks just for a minute too?
Well, welcome to our program today. Just to give you a little background about myself, my graduate work has been in the areas of psychology, business, and neuroscience. My career has been focused on translating brain research into practical tools for corporations such as Goldman Sachs, Johnson & Johnson, and Honda of America.
Wow, Diane. Now, what do these companies want to accomplish with this kind of information? And we're talking about the brain today, people.
Toni, innovative companies are looking for ways to enable their employees to think smarter, to produce better results, and to do all of that more effortlessly. Companies like these demand results that are really immediate, practical, and measurable.
Diane, those are the same kinds of things that traders and investors are also looking for. You know, we want to make more money, we want to make it faster, and we want to make profits more consistently. So what can you tell us? What can we learn about the brain that will help us do that?
Well, Toni, we can really learn a great deal because 95% of your trading success is tied to how you use your brain.
You know, Diane, when I teach my students, and some of them are in this room today, my students and I discuss technical analysis. We discuss fundamental analysis. We discuss market internals. We analyze factors, all of them, when you come to think of it, that are outside of ourselves.
Things like in the external world.
Things in the external world. Okay? So what we're not doing is we're not looking inside ourselves. We do a little bit with market psychology, but not to the degree that you're going to talk about today. I think that turning inside of ourselves and learning to use our brains more effectively and take that into the outside world, now that's a different approach. So tell us a little bit more.
Well, many traders and investors have access to the same market information. So, Toni, merely having the information no longer can give you the edge. But how you use your brain, how that brain uses the information that you get, the patterns that you're able to detect, what kind of opportunities you're able to see, those are the kinds of things that are really going to make a difference in your portfolio. The bottom line difference between those who consistently make money in the market and those who don't is the very way they use their brain.
You know, Diane, one of the major challenges that we traders and investors deal with, and this is especially in these crazy market times, is stress, anxiety, and fear. The fear factor can drive us to make really bad mistakes. It makes us jump in at the wrong time. It makes us jump out of the market at the wrong time. Fear can even cause us to make what I call revenge trades, and that takes place when we make a losing trade and then to get so-called revenge on the market, and we all know how well that works, we want to earn back lost money, we make another trade or trades trying to revenge again. Well, I'll get you, we say to the markets, and then those trades turn out to be losers. And all of this is taking place because we're trading from a fearful mindset. And all of these fear-based actions make us lose money. So how can traders get rid of this fearful mindset so they are freed up to trade and invest with more confidence, which leads to higher gains? And you have talked to me, we've been talking about the Navy SEALs.
So let me talk about them a little bit more. The Navy SEALs are really the best of the best, and they've been applying what neuroscientists know about the brain in order to reduce their fear and anxiety. So I thought today, Toni, I'd share with you what the Navy has learned about managing fear that can be directly applied to the trading and investing process. And then I'll walk through the steps that the SEALs teach for managing anxiety. The third thing I'll show you are pictures of how these techniques actually impact your brain.
The Navy SEALs using neuroscience. You know, that's really impressive because the SEALs encounter the most demanding situations, real life and death circumstances. So I think it's so cool that they're using neuroscience.
Yes, you know, it's a really exciting thing that we can use brain technology and that it's so advanced that you can quickly see significant results.
You know what? Tell us about those results a little bit, Diane.
Okay, the first thing you need to know are some basics on how your brain is structured. Think about your brain as an older home that's been added onto during the years by the owners. In the basement is the oldest part, and that's called your reptilian brain. You and all reptiles have this brain part. The good news is it's responsible for your survival functions, such as breathing and your heart pumping. It automatically takes care of these things so you don't have to remember to take another breath or to keep your heart going. The bad news is it responds without thinking. The reptilian brain is focused on our survival, and at times we may feel like we will just die if we lose money on a trade. So your brain responds to ensure that you feel intensely threatened enough so that you'll take some kind of action. Unfortunately, the impulse to action may be so strong that you end up taking the wrong action. And we'll talk more about this later, but in our program, Trade Like a Master, Supercharge Your Brain for Maximum Profits, you'll discover exactly how your brain responds to stressful situations, and that's invaluable information.
You know, at times in the market, we feel like we're in a survival situation. Certainly that's been true at one time or another in the last couple of weeks. So you're talking about this small part of the brain that just wants to survive but doesn't think. I'm really hoping we have more to work with than just that part of the brain.
Well, the good news is that about 100,000 years ago, another part of our brain was formed. So imagine moving up to the first floor of your house. That brain is called the limbic brain, and it's very important in the processing of emotions and taking action on those emotions. So, think about all of the emotions that people experience in the trading process. How we manage those emotions, how we react to those emotions. Well, all of that determines the amount of money that we end up with at the end of the day.
So what you're saying is that this limbic part of our brain that I drew a line to right here on our screen, the limbic part of our brain plays a huge factor every day in how we respond to what's happening in the market. Is that right?
Toni, you're absolutely right. So let's take a look at how these two brain parts affected the Navy SEALs. Each year, the Navy selects 140 men for this elite group, and they found that only 36 men on average were able to survive the training. That's a failure rate of 75%.
Good grief, Diane. A failure rate of 75% in the market would be disastrous for traders and investors. I'm sure, and looking at these numbers, I'm sure that the Navy SEALs were highly motivated to reduce this level of failure.
Well, the thing that I found that was surprising, it wasn't the extreme physical endurance that eliminated candidates. They even had Olympic athletes who applied, and they didn't make the cut.
Well, then what was it?
The number one factor that caused the vast majority of candidates to be eliminated was the fear factor and the inability to manage it. So this is extremely important to the military because research shows that mistakes on the battlefield are almost always associated with fear and panic. Therefore, the capacity to control these responses really is a matter of life and death. So the successful SEAL recruits were the ones who were able to adapt their brains to the job. It wasn't the physical rigors that determined the winners. It's the ones who were able to manage their fear who survived the cut.
Wow. You know, Diane, you've talked about the parts of our brains that keep our bodies functioning, the parts of our brains that are responsible for taking action and for managing our emotions. So let's talk about the part that we think with. We do think, right? I mean, there's got to be something there.
Well, sometimes, we do question that, but there really is a thinking part of the brain. And it's on the second floor of your house, and it's called the Neocortex. It's the newest part in the evolution of your brain. This is where we do our problem solving, our strategizing, our analyzing of trading data. It specializes in thinking, and it lies right behind your eyes.
Okay, people, so if that's your eye, this is where it is. So help us put all of these brains together to understand why fear is so detrimental to conflict and trading. Fear just takes us down when other things would not.
Well, and there's a real reason why that happens, Toni. Because scientists discovered that information arrives at your emotional limbic brain 2 times faster than it does to your thinking neocortex brain. That means when you're under stress, your thinking brain gets bypassed.
Oh, that's just great news. So
I thought you'd be pleased.
Yeah, I like that. So I get scared, and the market falls like a stone, right? Like a stone off a cliff. So I get scared, and my neocortex, which solves problems, can't get the information.
That's right.
Oh, that's super. Oh, boy. Now, let's stop there for a minute. Before we go on, let's discuss for a moment how fear affects people in the stock market. Now, I believe that this is one example of when someone would experience fear, or some people downright panic. And looking at this chart of Alcoa Corporation, you know that they came out with earnings about a week and a half ago. And we know that on that Monday night, the market closed just a little under 32, and the Alcoa did, and the next morning it opened up at about 30, giving away quite a bit between that earnings announcement and the next day's gap down. And I mean, I've been in this business, or I've watched charts now all day, every day for 20 years, certainly every trading day. And while this would certainly not make me happy, in my earlier days it would throw me into an outright panic. And certainly the candles that followed it, if you have 1,000 shares of Alcoa, many people are fearful. We're going to talk about it more, but a chart like this, big red candles, can instill fear into people, fear into traders.
And to cause them to take some kind of detrimental action, possibly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Get out when you shouldn't. Maybe some people tend to buy more when it's going down. There's an art to that. But yeah, so actually, so this can cause fear, these kinds of charts. Now, actually, what we need to remember is that fear shows up in two forms. It's not only when you see big red candles on a chart. One is when one is when a significant incident occurs, like a sudden drop in the market. But and that gut-wrenching feeling can cause you to either freeze while you wait for your thinking brain to kick in, which you probably up until now, and I didn't until a while ago, know that we were waiting for our thinking brain to kick in, or you take some really regrettable actions. Now, my most graphic memory of that kind of fear was in the mid-90s. I was learning how to trade against the advice of about 5 stockbrokers where I lived. They didn't think I should do that, but I went right on ahead, and I bought a very risky tech stock. Now, a few mornings, after I bought it, this tech stock opened, gap down 9 points, and kept on going down another 10 points. And I remember watching Joe Kernan, if you all know CNBC, was on TV, and I remember him saying, I was just paralyzed, him saying, "I've never seen anything like this before." That's what Joe Kernan said. I remember watching the big red candle and more candles on my chart stretching lower and lower. And I remember feeling my hand on my mouse, but my hand would not move to click the sell button. And I remember thinking that my mind and my hand literally felt paralyzed. Now, I'll tell you what, that was no fun. I don't choose to ever go through that again, but that's the kind of fear that can keep you from doing, and that stock eventually just went away. So I took a big hit on that. Now I know better. I wouldn't have chosen that stock, and plus I did not have the skill set or the emotional discipline that I have now, or that whole scene would never happen. But I also didn't have the tools that we're going to talk to you about today in order to fix it, to make it better. So now let's go back to our discussion. The other kind of fear, the other form of fear, we said there were two. The other form is a milder yet constant, ongoing anxiety. It's a kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop feeling, not knowing exactly what's going to happen and not quite knowing what to do about it. And that's called anticipating fear. Now, this anticipating fear causes the nagging stress that can wind through us all day when we anticipate that the market could fall any time. One example of anticipating fear, I put up here a chart of Carter Incorporated. These are the baby clothes. Very aptly, the symbol for Carter is CRI, cry. Now, on this chart, as you can see, and this was probably an earnings announcement gap down as well, on this chart, this is the kind of fear when we don't get out at our stops, or we don't realize earnings are coming out, or we're not paying attention. This is the kind of stock that moves down, and every day we think it'll go higher. And it goes higher just enough times to make us think, well, maybe it'll be all right. So maybe we stay in, and then we get some green candles and we say, see, we're going to be all right. But in our gut, we know the shoe can drop at any time, and then it continues down. We didn't use foresight. We didn't use discipline. But most of all, a lot of this isn't our fault, because maybe we're almost paralyzed, we're numb, because our thoughts are in the reptilian part of our brain. We don't think we have any options. Another form of this anticipating anxiety has been the S&P 500, which has moved sideways most of the summer, then finally dropped, and we've never seen it stay up like that, and it finally did drop down. Now it's getting a little bit sloppy again as we work through earnings season, and we're anticipating the fear of a bad earnings season. What's the election going to do? What's going on with us in Yemen? And by the way, what's going on with Russia? And we know that all of these can affect the stock market. So we have what's called an anticipating fear. It's a nagging stress that can wind through us all day. So let's learn how to overcome that and get rid of it so it doesn't mess up our lives and our trading.
Yes, Toni, fear can really grip us tightly, or it can nag at us continuously. But either way, it limits our ability to tap into the effective resources of our thinking brain. So when we experience an intense situation like some of these that you've shown me, like a change in the market direction, it becomes imperative that we get out of our limited reptilian brain and move into our higher thinking neocortex brain.
Exactly, Diane. And the good news is, at least for me anyway, is that this is not complicated.
That's right, Toni. It's really not complicated. It's more of a matter of knowing the right actions to take. The Navy developed a 4-step process that enabled the recruits to learn how to react to threatening situations. And we're going to share that with our audience and share those steps with them in just a few minutes. The important thing for people to know is that you can learn a series of responses that will enable you to reduce your anxiety and bring a well thought out selection of solutions to your game.
Okay, but first, Diane, give us a specific example of what the SEALs did for managing fear under really what I think are horrible, harsh conditions.
Well, they are really horrible, harsh conditions. So let me just share with you the most powerful example I saw demonstrated. Some of our fears are pre-programmed into our brain. They're what we call primal fears. They're hardwired from birth. So they're the very hardest ones for us to overcome. And an example of that is not being able to breathe. There's almost nothing scarier, at least to me, because without oxygen, we know that within a few minutes we can lose conscious control. So the hardest test the SEALs are given is what's called the underwater test. And recruits are placed underwater for 20 minutes. They do have an oxygen tank. But during that time, instructors are constantly disconnecting the recruits' oxygen hoses. They're knotting them up. They're limiting their air supply in every way that they can think. The recruit's task is to remain underwater and to stay focused on dealing with all those distractions and interruptions the instructors are imposing upon them. Can you imagine being held underwater and having your oxygen tank shut off? The brain creates an almost overwhelming bodily impulse to just surface and get some air.
Wow, Diane, no, I can't imagine that. And we thought a huge drop in the market was bad.
I know. This is really a very scary thing that they do. So before the recruits are taken underwater for their extreme testing, they're taught a series of step-by-step processes that they are drilled on. But you and I know putting theory into practice under these kinds of demanding conditions isn't easy. So the instructors take them to the absolute breaking point to see how they're going to respond. The core issue for the Navy is, are the recruits able to do what is necessary to survive and succeed under the most demanding conditions?
You know, I mean, to another degree, that's the same as in the market. So we all need to ask ourselves, when the going gets tough, if we were a Navy SEAL being held underwater and having our oxygen turned off, and sometimes the market feels the same way. When the going gets tough, are you still able to do what's necessary to succeed?
Yes, that's exactly what the Navy wanted to know, what was going on in the recruit's brain while they were having this kind of challenge. And one of the things that they discovered is that the messages are being sent to the reptilian brain at 270 miles per hour. Toni,
Wow.
That's faster than you and I drive.
Yeah, a little bit.
So this intense speed by which things are sent to your reptilian brain causes chemicals to be released. And those chemicals make rational thought more difficult, sometimes almost impossible. So you have an almost overwhelming impulse to surface for air, and that's what gets created for the person to take some kind of action. But Toni, what's really needed most at this point is the ability to remain focused and to shift to our thinking rational brain. So to improve their recruits' performance, the Navy worked with neuroscientists to develop a 4-step process to boost their ability to control fear even under the most extreme circumstances.
That sounds great, Diane. I sure hope this is easy to learn.
Yes, it actually is, and it can be taught in small steps that are easy to assimilate. So in essence, you're able to literally rewire how your brain responds to demanding challenges. And this results in your being able to trade from a much more resourceful parts of your brain. In a moment, I'll show you actual pictures of how you can change your brain to be more resourceful and how to respond faster to difficult market situations, just like the SEAL recruits had to respond underwater with very little oxygen.
Okay, Diane, could you give us a sampling, please, of what the SEALs learned that enabled them to have such a quantum shift in their performance?
Sure, Toni, I'd be glad to. But what the scientists found is that specialized exercises can improve our reactions during demanding circumstances. Specific aspects that they found that contributed the most to maintaining composure were: 1, goal setting. Goal setting works by assisting that neocortex, that part that's responsible for reasoning, planning, and logical thinking. By planning ahead of time with specific goals, you'll be able to structure to chaotic situations and keep your emotional brain in check.
Okay, so what I'm thinking of, you all, is think of goal setting not as some boring concept that self-help gurus go on and on about, and I go on and on about in Toni's Market Club, don't think of goal setting as a boring concept. Please think of it as a vital strategy that keeps you alive during market turndowns. First, make sure you have an overall financial plan that targets your financial goals. Now, for example, if you're 30, 40, or even 50 years old, you can take minor market drawdowns with a grain of salt if you're looking at the longer term. But if you're over 55 or 60, maybe you take market drawdowns seriously. And I'll give you a hint about that in just a second. Also, you need a training plan for each trade. A trading plan for each trade, and I think you all know that. We're not going into that here, but that is a goal. Having a plan for each trade and assessing it as a rule is a goal. You also want to have strict risk management. That's the only thing that keeps you in the game. Now, as far as in market drawdowns, for my longer term trades and my core trades, I look at a 12-month moving average on a monthly chart. This is simple. I have a 12-month moving average on a monthly line chart. If the market moves below the 12-month moving average, I go mostly to cash. So those kinds of things don't sound like goals, but they are. They are rules, they are goals, they're what you live by. So Diane, that's the first step. What's the second step?
The second step is mentally rehearsing or visualizing. This process is where you replay an activity, say executing stops. With your mind, you rehearse this several times in your mind as though you're rehearsing it, you're going over it. What this mental rehearsal does is that each time you replay the activity in your mind, you create a path or a connection in your brain. And I'm actually going to show you a picture of this in a few minutes. When you replay that activity repetitively, it allows you to try out the skill ahead of time. And the rehearsing enables you to then activate that skill on demand.
Well, and as you know, Diane, Olympic athletes, they do this all the time. They mentally rehearse going down the ski slope exactly as they want. And I will tell you quickly that I actually was racing once. I was scared, I'll tell you that much. I was scared to death. But as I got up to the gate to race down in a NASCAR race on skis, I had the fortitude to look down the race track with the flags up, and I visualized how I wanted to get down that slope, and I actually, and without, by the way, taking out the guy next to me who was doing the same thing, and by doing that and by calming down my fear, I got down it and I won a medal. So this is possible. So you want to plan out in advance the best way, in this case to address the ski slope. When you plan out in advance, all of your body reflexes actually get to practice responding in exactly the same manner, in exactly the correct manner, and you need to do that in trading as well. Now, the first time you encounter a problem, the first time the market drops, you may not be as good at dealing with it because it's your first time. But if you've rehearsed it 10 times, if you've already practiced exiting at your stop, exiting at your stop, exiting at your stop, you can plan out in advance the very best way to respond. So let's say you practice 10 times how you might handle executing a trade in a turbulent market. That means the first time you actually face the situation, you've already rehearsed it, say 10 times. So then when you actually encounter it, it isn't the first time for you, it's the 11th time. So you've set yourself up to be able to handle the situation with greater skill and expertise. And because you've already rehearsed the situation, it will have less of an emotional trigger for you. You won't go, oh gosh, now I'm losing money. And less of an emotional trigger means that that in itself enables you to more easily remain where you want to be, which is in your thinking brain. Now, traders can do that by practicing taking profits at their profit target, and more importantly, exiting at their predetermined protective stops.
So the third item that we want to talk about is called self-talk. And the average person speaks to themselves at 300 to 1,000 words a minute. Most people talk to themselves so much every day that they even tune themselves out, and they aren't even conscious of their own dialogue. If these words are positive instead of negative, they can help override the fear signal. Toni, can you give us an example of what we could say to ourselves in the market?
Sure, Diane. Often our brain runs in the what if loop when we're trading. What if the S&P 500 breaks 2100? All my stocks will fall and I'll be ruined. What you want to stop where you're thinking, gosh, I'm an idiot, I can't trade correctly. Don't think those kinds of thoughts, please. What you want to do is replace the negative thoughts with positive thoughts, such as, if the S&P 500 breaks 2100, I can make money selling short, or I can use inverse exchange traded funds to hedge my account, or I can hedge with options, or I can trade commodities, which many times don't care which way the broader market goes. Or I will take some of my profits, and maybe I'm just going to wait on the sidelines for other opportunities that always show up with market turndowns. So no matter what happens, I can still protect my capital, and that's the most important action any of us can take. So just hold on to, no matter what happens, I still protect my capital, and that keeps you in the neocortex part of your brain.
Toni, an important thing for people in our audience to know is that negative thoughts trigger very different chemicals in the body than positive thoughts. Negative thoughts literally weaken your muscles and your ability to think rationally. The positive thoughts strengthen your muscles and they enable your thinking brain to respond with greater clarity. You know, Toni, we are the only ones who can control what we think, and each thought is literally strengthening or weakening each of us. So we all need to choose smartly. The fourth and last item is arousal control. It is a process of shifting your brain from an anxiety state to a calm, more resourceful state by slowing down your breathing. Your breath is one of the fastest ways to move your brain from a dysfunctional to a functional state. This specific process can even help overcome that very deep primal panic response. And this technique is so incredibly easy to do. All you need to do is start slowing down your breath.
Yes, it's easy to do. You just need to remember it.
Do it,
yes. Remember to do it.
So you just put a little stickum there by.
That's right.
Yes, okay.
Says breathe.
Your breath, interestingly enough, is the one thing that connects and integrates your unconscious mind with your conscious mind. And as we move into fear, we automatically start breathing from the top portion of our lungs, and we start breathing faster and more shallow. The faster, shallower breathing actually increases our anxiety and begins to move us out of our thinking brain and down into that limbic brain where we experience fear. So what we have here is a chart showing brain activity, and you can see in that top left-hand corner that brain is in a lot of anxiety. It's intense, it's fast. This is where you're breathing from the top of your lungs and you're breathing quickly and in a very shallow manner. As this person slowly begins to lengthen their breaths and begin to slow down their breathing, you can see the brain itself actually slowing down. So there's a direct correlation between slowing your breath and slowing your brain so it goes out of that fear mode.
Okay, so I'm thinking about a trading room I was in the mid-90s when I first started trading, in just at the mid-90s. I was in a trading room in New York City, and there were about 15 of us in this large office, all with multiple monitors, and we sat and we traded all day, making dozens and dozens and dozens of trade. We were the true day traders. When the market would start down precipitously, our mentor Greg would walk up and down the aisles behind us and yell, "Breathe, breathe, breathe deep." Because, as Greg explained it, and as Diane is explaining it, when you're stressed out, you stop breathing. We all do, and that's exactly when you need it the most.
That's right. The main takeaway here is to become conscious of your breathing and to deliberately begin to slow down your pace and begin to breathe deeper.
You know, I found it helpful to just yawn or exhale more slowly than I normally do. I inhale to the count of 3 and then exhale to the count of 5. And by the way, I do this at night when I first climb into bed, and it helps me sleep better.
Toni, you're exactly right. It's simple, but its effects on the brain are powerful. Long exhales mimic the brain's relaxation process, and therefore they provide more oxygen to the brain so it can perform better. Now that's extremely important because the brain uses 20% of the body's total oxygen supply. And when we become stressed, our breathing automatically shifts to shallow breaths. It's just an automatic thing. And that immediately reduces the amount of fuel or oxygen that the brain needs in order to operate successfully. These specific breathing techniques can provide a great focusing ability for our brains.
It does help us focus, Diane, and we need to remember that all day when we're trading and investing. You know, these exercises are like the steps an Olympic athlete takes before a major competition. And we both know this is exactly what they do. And they rehearse and they prepare for months so that their skills are finely tuned. And we need to do that in the stock market. So let's look at these steps again quickly and review them very quickly. The 4 steps are: have goals, plan. Plan on paper, please, if you can. Take pen to paper. Makes a huge difference. Know where you want to go and plan out how you want to get there to the best of your ability. That way, when the market gets scary, you can move back up into your neocortex and say, oh no, I have a plan and I'm going to follow it. Next, rehearse, practice. Practice entering and exiting trades, paper trade. If you don't want a paper trade, at least mentally, without clicking on the buy or sell button, click on the charts. Do something so that if fear does hit you, you can rise out of that thought process, and you have practiced so many times exiting at your stop, exiting at your stop, exiting at your stop, that you do it automatically. Self-talk, our self-talk all needs to be positive. As Diane said, being positive, having positive thoughts actually strengthens your muscles. I mean, there's a good reason right there. Positive self-talk is what gets us where we want to go. Negative self-talk is what drops us down into our fear zone, and that's exactly where we do not want to be. Finally, remember to breathe. It's free, it's simple, there are no calories. Please breathe. This can help you all day long if you remember now and then just to take 4 or 5 deep breaths. 10 is better. It will help you in the market and it will help you in life.
Well, you're right, Toni. And the important point that the SEALs discovered wasn't these individual techniques, but what was important they found was the tremendous leverage effect that's created from having all the techniques at their disposal.
Well, I totally agree. It's as we say in the stock market with earnings, it's accretive. It all works together for the best. And I know that since I've incorporated these techniques into my life, I found that they do reduce market stress and anxiety greatly. And as I said, I use them in the rest of my life, not just the market, but I use them in the rest of my life as well. Now we're going to look at some brain diagrams in just a moment that are really interesting and exciting, but
they're just as exciting as charts.
oh, nothing's as exciting as charts. Oh, that's the most fun of all. Sad, but I really believe that. But first, speaking of performance, in our new program, it is a very cool program. Trade Like a Master, Supercharge Your Brain for Maximum Profits. Diane and I will show you how to power up and access different parts of your brain so that when you need them for maximum power, both in the stock market and in your life, you can do just that. So go ahead and go to this link for more information. I think it's a live link right here. It may be, it may not be, but you can go to http://tonyturner.com/supercharge and check it out.
Now, Toni, can we look at the brain diagrams?
No, you think it's more exciting than charts, don't you?
Well, one of the things that you get to receive in the program is your brain profile. And this is actually just a model of the two brains that we talked about. We talked about the neocortex, the part that thinks, and we know that you can think about details, you can think logically, analytically, about facts, about money, and we know that you can think big picture, you can think in a kind of a innovative kind of way. You can integrate and synthesize the information that you need. So you can think in multiple ways, and this is really the neocortex, this A and D. These two components make up your neocortex. And we talked about your limbic brain, the part that takes action. And that part of the brain can take action with things. It can be organized. It can have structure. It can sequence and plan things that we talked about, so important. It can also do things around feeling, around, you know, what is this, how's this trade going to impact my son's college degree or college tuition? So it's where all of our emotions lie that cause us to take action. So that two parts of the brain, they have been able to identify all of the different activities or skill sets that we use in our daily life and our trading life. And what we provide for you is you actually get a personalized copy of your brain from the #1 brain profiling company in the world. And you actually, once you get your brain profile and we explain it to you and you understand it, you're then able to create your trading profile. And Toni, talk just for a minute about why that trading profile is so important.
Well, as Diane said, when you join Trade Like a Master, Supercharge Your Brain for Maximum Profits, the first thing that you receive, you fill out a questionnaire, and right away sent back to you by Herman International is your personal brain profile. The thing is that we have these 4 sections of our brain that Diane explained to you. Most of us come from 1, 2, or 3 parts of our brains. We prefer to come, that's how we solve problems and look at situations. We prefer to come from just a limited portion of our brain. However, once you learn from your personal brain profile where you come from in your brain, then we are going to help you develop your personal trading profile, not only your brain profile, but take that into your personal trading profile. And that shows you how to look at the market, and it enables you to approach the market in a fresh and much more powerful way. And when you do that, the natural follower is that you bring home increased gains. Diane, I just thought of something.
What, Toni?
Better brain, bigger gains. Do you like that?
I like it. I like it. And it's so true.
It is so true. It is so true.
So when you speak about brains, let's take a look at some brain cells.
Right.
Okay, here we're into the good stuff. These are actual mice brain cells, and the reason why we use them is because they look and behave very much like yours. So these, you notice that on these brain cells, there's these branches. They're kind of like branches on a tree, and those are what we actually think with. So on the left side, you see a brain cell with dendrites, and that's a pretty traditional looking brain cell. That's what the average person's brain cells would look like if they were trading and getting average kinds of results. The brain cell on the right is those brain cells that have been enriched. And we show you very specifically in the program how to enrich your brain cells, how you actually change the physiology of that. And that's really important, and we're going to share that with you in just a moment. But first, what I'd like for you to do is let's look at what a thought is. So if you'd go to the next slide for us, a thought is actually an electrical chemical connection between two dendrites. So as Toni just showed you there with that red line that went from one brain dendrite to the other, when that happens, you either have a thought or you take some kind of action. So this is really important, and I want you just to think about that for a moment. Every time you have a thought or you take an action, you're creating a path in your brain. So when we talked about rehearsing something, so let's say you're rehearsing executing a stop. The first time you run that image of executing the stop, you're making a connection in the brain. You're laying down a path, in essence. The next time you run that same thought or you do that action, it becomes deeper and deeper. We have some brain paths that are so deep we'll never get rid of them. And that's the good news, say something like walking or understanding language. So this is why rehearsing in your mind becomes so important. You literally are able to build beforehand the connection, the brain path that you want to make under a time of stress so that it physically is already there for you. So if you go to the next slide, I'd like to go back to those dendrites. And we talked about the two brain cells under section A there are for a normal mouse or a normal person, and the ones under B are for someone who has enhanced their brain cells. And I want you to think about what we just talked about in terms that a thought or an action is a connection between two dendrites. So you notice on A there aren't nearly as many dendrites as there are on the brain cells under B. And that's highly important because the more dendrites that you have, obviously, the more you're able to come up with connections, solutions, ideas, insights. If you don't have much to connect with, you're going to actually be physically limited to what you can think about. So scientists found that the number of dendrites that an individual has And let's say that you're doing a specific activity in trading, and we can identify specifically where that is in your brain and identify pretty much what kind of brain cells you have going there. You can see the ones on the right with a lot more dendrites. We have a lot more potential. We have a lot more ability to come up with great solutions. So the number of dendrites is important. The length of dendrites is important. So over here on the left, you notice it's further to make that connection between the two dendrites. That means that responding is going to take you longer. If you notice on the ones on B, that's a really short connection. That person is able to be very responsive to whatever they're encountering. Well, we know, Toni, that in the market, the ability to be more resourceful and to do that quickly are really imperative kinds of things. So what we wanted to show you here is that you literally can change your brain. This is what it will look like. And these are actually very easy to do. We give you very step-by-step techniques. And it doesn't take long to actually change the brain because the brain behaves a lot like a muscle. So you know when you go to the gym, you can literally change those biceps in, say, 4 to 6 weeks. It's about the same process with the brain. So let's show one more here. The last thing that's really important is the substance that surrounds your dendrite, that coats the dendrite, and it's called myelin. And as we get older, as we're exposed to chemicals in our environment, as we experience stress, as we experience a whole lot of things in our life, that myelin can begin to dry up. And God forbid you have dry myelin. Yes, okay. So MS would be an example of dry myelin. Can't make the electrical connection to go down the dendrite to the muscles. Well, I want you to take a look at your right hand and kind of scrunch your right hand up like someone who has really severe arthritis. You've seen those people where their knuckles are all kind of swollen and they're gnarled. And that person, after a while that has that arthritis in their joints, their fingers are all bent. And after a while, they can no longer straighten those fingers. Their fingers are fixed. They're rigid. If you ever known anyone who was rigid and fixed in their thinking process, that's what happens when we get dry myelin. We become rigid and fixed. And given the market, that's the last thing we want. So we show you how to exercise that so you have a great ability to be adaptable in a changing market. So let's take a look at what all that really means to us in the market. When you exercise your brain and you can go in and identify the specific skills in the specific area in the brain that you want to develop, then you use our techniques and you can actually change from the one on the left to the one on the right. What that's going to mean for you in your trading is that you're going to have greatly enhanced problem-solving capability because you're going to have a lot more dendrites to connect with. You're going to be able to make those trading decisions, those better decisions, in much less time, and you're going to be able to adapt to the changing market.
So Diane, with all that we've just learned, please share with us the 3 steps we need real quickly here because we're coming to a close in order to transform our brain's trading ability.
Okay, Toni, we can do this in just 1 minute. The first step is knowledge. We want to take these first steps to learn what's possible with the brain and what it takes to improve its performance. So in Trade Like a Master, Supercharge Your Brain for Maximum Profits is just packed with profound information from leading sources in the financial and scientific field. The second is for you to experience those things. And we do that in easy to follow processes. We invite you to try on these tools and techniques. And we share with you how to take each step so that you're able to experience really immediate success. And the last and the third step is to practice these processes. We demonstrate the tips and techniques to help you put the things you've learned into daily practice. This will take your trading and investing to new levels of success and help you achieve your financial goals a lot quicker and much more easier. Just imagine how all that would feel.
Well, I think it feels fantastic. So, if the Navy SEALs are able to transcend their limitations, their mental limitations, which is everything, under the roughest possible conditions, imagine what those of around us who are in the market can do. Now, if you know you have the ability to remain calm, if you know you have the ability to tap into the best thinking parts of your brain to get important insights, if you know you have the ability to control your limiting fears, your anxiety, then this knowledge can automatically increase your level of confidence in the market and lead you to making smarter and more insightful decisions. And again, not only in the market, but in your life as well. Using our brain-based, scientifically proven methods, you can discover how to use more of your brain's power. I've done it, and you can do it. This will enable you to see and do things you did not know were possible, both in the markets and in your life. So to learn more about trade like a master, supercharge your brain for maximum profits, go to the link on this screen. Now, I don't think this is a live link. I think you'll just have to copy it. It's easy. The introductory price that we're using right now is for a limited time only, so please take advantage now. Thank you all for attending today.
Thank you.
Please be careful out there. Keep green on your screen, and we look forward to seeing you in Supercharge soon.